Flow into gratitude as you watch, because one of the most expensive mistakes in human history is the obsession with fighting symptoms while protecting causes. In every field that produces extraordinary results eventually discovers the same principle, that if you want lasting change, you do not manage consequences, you eliminate sources. And this is true in science, where the greatest breakthroughs come from identifying fundamental mechanisms rather than treating visible effects. And it is true in psychology, where sustainable transformation begins not with controlling behavior but with understanding the beliefs generating the behavior. And it is true in entrepreneurship, where great founders do not build businesses around products, they build them around root problems that millions of people experience repeatedly. And it is true in marketing, where amateurs sell features while masters identify the deep emotional drivers beneath human decisions, because people rarely buy what they say they want, they buy what solves the invisible tension operating underneath what they say they want. And this principle becomes even more powerful in finance, because the average person tries to solve money problems at the level of income, while the deeper issue often exists at the level of habits, incentives, attention, emotional regulation, and decision quality, because financial outcomes are usually delayed reflections of invisible systems operating beneath awareness. And until those systems change, the numbers eventually return to their previous patterns. And this is why the stock market continuously transfers wealth from emotional decision makers to disciplined decision makers, because markets do not merely reward intelligence, they reward the ability to identify root causes beneath noise, while everyone else reacts to surface events. And the same pattern appears in leadership, because weak leadership manages crises while strong leadership prevents crises by identifying the conditions that create them in the first place. And perhaps nowhere is this principle more obvious than in law enforcement, because societies become stable not when consequences are discussed endlessly, but when the root incentives that produce harmful behavior are understood and addressed with consistency, clarity, accountability, and zero tolerance for the processes that generate larger damage over time. Because every major failure begins small before it becomes visible, and every major success begins invisible before it becomes obvious. And the tragedy is that most people only pay attention once effects become impossible to ignore, while high performers train themselves to observe causes long before effects appear. And that single habit creates enormous advantages, because reality itself is structured through causation, not appearance. And once you begin seeing the world through that lens, everything changes, because now every problem becomes a trail leading backward toward a source, every recurring frustration becomes evidence of a deeper mechanism, every financial struggle becomes a signal, every organizational failure becomes a pattern, every market movement becomes a reflection of incentives, and every personal limitation becomes an invitation to investigate what is producing it. And this is where gratitude becomes unexpectedly powerful, because gratitude creates enough psychological stability to observe reality honestly without becoming emotionally defensive. And honest observation is the starting point of all meaningful improvement, because you cannot remove a root you refuse to acknowledge. And maybe the most valuable mindset a person can develop is the relentless determination to move beyond symptoms, beyond narratives, beyond excuses, beyond temporary fixes, and ask one question again and again until clarity emerges: what is the root? And then once the root is found, to act decisively, because history repeatedly demonstrates that the people who transform industries build wealth-led organizations.